In Salem, Oregon, Eleanor Vance, a 53-year-old civil servant, maintained a life characterized by established routines and professional diligence. Her existence was largely predictable, anchored by her responsibilities. It was within this structured environment, approximately 120 days prior to a critical incident, that an unsolicited digital communication initiated a chain of events. A message appeared on a social media platform originating from a profile identified as Victor Thorne, an individual claiming to be a British civil engineer. Initial contact was marked by polite discourse and a seemingly genuine interest in Eleanor Vance's life. Digital communication logs indicate a rapid escalation in the frequency and personal nature of these exchanges. Within approximately 8 weeks, the interaction between Eleanor Vance and Victor Thorne had transitioned into what forensic analysis of their communications would later classify as an intense online romantic relationship sustained by daily messages and extended virtual conversations across multiple digital platforms. By the third month, Victor Thorne had systematically cultivated a significant level of perceived emotional and financial trust. This enabled the extraction of personal and financial details from Eleanor Vance. Approximately 30 days later, Victor Thorne introduced a specific proposition, a business opportunity necessitating travel to Lima, Peru for the purpose of transporting what he described as sensitive documents. Following this instruction, Eleanor Vance proceeded to book her flight. Upon her arrival in Lima on day 1, she checked into a luxury hotel as directed. On day 5, Eleanor Vance presented herself for departure at Lima International Airport. During routine security screening, a black suitcase in her possession was flagged for anomalous density within its structure. A subsequent physical examination by Peruvian anti-drug task force personnel revealed approximately 5 kilograms of high-purity cocaine concealed within a special lining of the luggage. This discovery immediately led to her apprehension and formal arrest by the Peruvian anti-drug task force. The arrest of Eleanor Vance at Lima International Airport was not merely an isolated incident. It represented the abrupt collapse of a meticulously constructed digital facade. This case underscores the profound vulnerability inherent in online interactions and the devastating efficacy of targeted psychological manipulation. For 120 days, Victor Thorne had cultivated an illusion of companionship and romance, systematically dismantling Eleanor Vance's critical faculties through a process later identified by investigators as love bombing. The digital footprint recovered from her devices paints a stark contrast between the idealized image presented online and the grim reality of her situation. Eleanor Vance's life, once stable and unremarkable in Salem, Oregon, was fundamentally reconfigured by this encounter. The narrative of a civil servant seeking connection was exploited to transform her into an unwitting conduit for international drug trafficking. This case serves as a critical example of how the universal human desire for companionship can be weaponized. The American dream of security and personal autonomy was shattered, replaced by the stark reality of foreign incarceration. In the immediate aftermath of her arrest on day 5, Eleanor Vance underwent initial apprehension and interrogation by the Peruvian anti-drug task force. Her claims of manipulation and innocence were meticulously documented, forming a crucial part of the investigative record. However, the physical evidence, 5 kilograms of cocaine within the suitcase she carried, was undeniable. Within 48 hours of her arrest, a critical piece of evidence emerged. All digital traces of Victor Thorne, his social media profiles, email accounts, and messaging history were systematically erased or deactivated. This swift digital deletion provided strong circumstantial evidence of a deliberate and coordinated criminal operation. By day 7, formal charges of international drug trafficking were levied against Eleanor Vance, and U.S. consular services were duly notified. The following day, Eleanor Vance was transferred to pretrial detention within a correctional facility, marking the beginning of a prolonged and complex legal ordeal. This immediate post-arrest phase illuminated the calculated nature of the deception. The perpetrator had vanished, leaving Eleanor Vance to face the severe legal consequences alone. To comprehend the mechanics of this operation, a forensic examination of the key individuals involved is essential. Eleanor Vance, the victim, was a 53-year-old civil servant residing in Salem, Oregon. Her professional life was characterized by adherence to protocol and a methodical approach, qualities that paradoxically made her susceptible to a meticulously crafted deception. Digital forensics later revealed her online activity demonstrated a pattern consistent with individuals seeking connection and companionship, a common vulnerability exploited by romance fraud networks. Her background provided no indicators of prior criminal involvement or association with illicit activities, reinforcing the investigative hypothesis of her unwitting participation. The primary perpetrator, operating under the fabricated identity of Victor Thorne, presented himself as a British civil engineer. This persona was engineered with specific attributes designed to resonate with Eleanor Vance's perceived demographic and psychological profile. Analysis of the communication patterns indicates Victor Thorne employed classic love-bombing techniques: intense affection, constant communication, declarations of profound connection, and the creation of an illusion of shared values and future. The fabricated profession lent an air of credibility and financial stability, mitigating potential suspicions regarding his wealth or need for business opportunities. The absence of any verifiable physical presence for Victor Thorne, coupled with his systematic digital erasure post-arrest, strongly indicated a professional, organized criminal entity operating from an undisclosed location, meticulously maintaining anonymity. The third key individual was Mateo Rojas, the local facilitator in Lima. Surveillance footage and Eleanor Vance's testimony established his physical interaction with her. On day 2 of Eleanor Vance's stay in Lima, Mateo Rojas met her in the luxury hotel lobby, delivering the black suitcase containing the concealed narcotics. His role was strictly operational, a physical intermediary ensuring the transfer of the illicit package. Forensic analysis of the suitcase itself identified it as a standard commercial item, expertly modified to include a hidden compartment, a common technique employed by drug couriers. Mateo Rojas's actions were consistent with those of an individual operating within a larger, pre-established logistical network, executing a specific task within the broader modus operandi of the trafficking organization. His identity and subsequent actions became a critical focus for the Peruvian anti-drug task force in their efforts to dismantle the network. The modus operandi employed in the case of Eleanor Vance was a sophisticated, multi-stage process meticulously designed to exploit human vulnerability and bypass conventional security measures. It commenced approximately 120 days prior to the arrest with the unsolicited social media message from Victor Thorne. This initial contact was not random. It targeted individuals exhibiting specific online behaviors indicative of a desire for connection. The subsequent 60 days involved an intensive love-bombing phase, characterized by constant digital communication across multiple platforms. This included daily messages, extended virtual conversations, and the systematic cultivation of an emotional bond. The perpetrator's communications were crafted to create an illusion of intimacy and shared future, a psychological tactic aimed at overriding rational judgment. As the emotional bond solidified, approximately 30 days before the arrest, Victor Thorne initiated the next phase, the extraction of personal and financial details. This established a perceived level of trust that would later be leveraged. The business opportunity was introduced approximately 1 month prior to Eleanor Vance's travel to Lima. This proposition, framed as a legitimate and low-risk favor involving sensitive documents, was the critical pivot. The instructions were precise: travel to Lima, check into a specific luxury hotel, and await further contact. The choice of a luxury hotel served to maintain the facade of a legitimate high-stakes business transaction, further disarming any potential suspicion. Upon Eleanor Vance's arrival in Lima on day 1, the physical network activated. On day 2, she met Mateo Rojas in the hotel lobby. This meeting, captured by hotel surveillance footage, documented the precise moment of the illicit transfer. A black suitcase, outwardly unremarkable but internally modified, was handed to Eleanor Vance. Forensic examination of this suitcase by the Peruvian Anti-Drug Task Force later confirmed the presence of a special lining concealing approximately 5 kilograms of high-purity cocaine. This concealment method, designed to evade superficial inspection, is a known technique within drug trafficking circles. The subsequent days, day 3 and 4, were designed to appear as typical tourist activity, maintaining the illusion of normalcy while Eleanor Vance unknowingly possessed the contraband. The final stage of the modus operandi was her attempted departure on day 5 from Lima International Airport. The expectation was that her unsuspecting demeanor and the sophisticated concealment would allow her to pass through security undetected. However, the density anomalies within the suitcase, detected by airport screening technology, triggered the alarm. Post-arrest, the immediate and systematic erasure of Victor Thorne's digital footprint within 48 hours underscored the pre-planned nature of the operation, demonstrating the perpetrator's calculated efforts to sever all ties and evade identification, leaving Eleanor Vance to bear the full legal consequences. On day 5 at Lima International Airport, Eleanor Vance's attempt to depart was abruptly terminated. The detection of anomalies within her black suitcase during routine security screening initiated a sequence of events that rapidly exposed the meticulously crafted deception. The Peruvian Anti-Drug Task Force, alerted by the airport security apparatus, conducted a physical inspection. This forensic examination confirmed the presence of a special lining within the luggage, ingeniously designing to conceal approximately 5 kilograms of high-purity cocaine. The discovery was irrefutable, leading to Eleanor Vance's immediate apprehension and formal arrest. Following her arrest, Eleanor Vance was transported to a secure facility for initial processing and interrogation. Under questioning, she maintained a consistent narrative of manipulation, asserting her unwitting participation in the illicit act. Her statements detailed the online romantic relationship with Victor Thorne and the business opportunity that had led her to Lima. Investigators meticulously documented these claims, cross-referencing them with the physical evidence. The primary physical evidence, the cocaine-laden suitcase, was secured and cataloged, its contents undergoing preliminary field tests to confirm the nature of the substance. The critical 36-48 hours post-arrest proved pivotal. While Eleanor Vance was undergoing interrogation, the architect of her predicament, Victor Thorne, initiated a systematic digital eradication. Within this narrow window, all verifiable digital traces of his existence, social media profiles, email accounts, and messaging histories were meticulously and completely erased or deactivated. This swift and comprehensive digital deletion provided a crucial, albeit circumstantial, piece of evidence. It indicated a pre-planned operational procedure by a sophisticated criminal entity designed to sever all ties to the unwitting courier, leaving no digital breadcrumbs for law enforcement to follow. This action underscored the calculated nature of the deception, demonstrating a deliberate effort to evade identification and accountability, effectively isolating Eleanor Vance as the sole identifiable participant in the trafficking attempt. On day 7, 48 hours after her arrest, the Peruvian Anti-Drug Task Force formally levied charges of international drug trafficking against Eleanor Vance. The evidence presented included the confiscated narcotics, the modified suitcase, and preliminary statements from the accused. U.S. consular services were officially notified of her detention and the charges filed. This notification initiated the diplomatic process for consular assistance, though it did not alter the immediate legal trajectory within the Peruvian judicial system. By day 8, Eleanor Vance was transported from the initial holding facility to pretrial detention within a designated correctional facility. This marked the transition from immediate apprehension to a formalized legal process. The physical environment shifted from an interrogation room to a custodial setting, signaling the commencement of a protracted legal battle within a foreign jurisdiction. The perpetrator, Victor Thorne, remained an elusive digital phantom, his actions leaving a tangible trail of evidence in Lima, but no direct path to his apprehension. The comprehensive investigation by the Peruvian Anti-Drug Task Force commenced immediately following Eleanor Vance's transfer to pretrial detention, spanning the critical week 1 to week 4 post-arrest. The investigative methodology focused on the meticulous collection and analysis of physical and digital evidence, aimed at understanding the full scope of the operation and identifying additional perpetrators. Central to the investigation was the forensic analysis of the black suitcase. Laboratory examination confirmed the substance concealed within the special lining was indeed 5 kilograms of high-purity cocaine, with a purity index exceeding 90%. The special lining itself was identified as a sophisticated modification, a false bottom constructed from composite materials, expertly integrated to mimic the suitcase's original structure. This modification was designed to defeat conventional X-ray screening by presenting a density profile that, while anomalous, could be mistaken for legitimate structural components by less advanced systems. Chemical analysis of the lining materials showed traces consistent with industrial-grade adhesives and reinforcing polymers, indicating professional fabrication rather than an amateur alteration. The estimated street value of the confiscated narcotics was significant, underscoring the high-stakes nature of the trafficking attempt. Simultaneously, digital forensic experts initiated the extraction and analysis of data from Eleanor Vance's personal electronic devices, including her smartphone and laptop. Despite Victor Thorne's swift digital erasure, investigators were able to recover fragments of communication logs, metadata, and cache data. This included partial message threads across multiple platforms, IP addresses associated with Victor Thorne's communications prior to deletion, and timestamps of interaction. While the content of Victor Thorne's profiles and direct messages had been purged, the residual data provided a chronological map of the communication intensity and the platforms utilized. This corroborated Eleanor Vance's account of the protracted love bombing phase and the eventual introduction of the business opportunity. The IP address analysis indicated a pattern of VPN usage or proxy servers, consistent with individuals deliberately obscuring their geographical location and digital footprint. Further critical evidence was obtained through the analysis of surveillance footage. The Peruvian Anti-Drug Task Force secured video recordings from the luxury hotel where Eleanor Vance had stayed. Footage from Day 2 clearly depicted Eleanor Vance in the hotel lobby engaging with an individual later identified as Mateo Rojas. The video captured the precise moment Mateo Rojas handed Eleanor Vance the black suitcase. Facial recognition software and witness statements aided in the positive identification of Mateo Rojas, establishing his physical presence and direct involvement in the illicit transfer. This visual confirmation was instrumental in corroborating Eleanor Vance's account of the exchange and identifying a tangible link to the ground operation. Despite extensive efforts, including attempts to trace the origin of the cocaine and to identify the broader network behind Victor Thorne and Mateo Rojas, the full extent of the international trafficking organization remained elusive. The digital ghosting of Victor Thorne and the operational security employed by the network demonstrated a high level of sophistication, presenting significant challenges to a comprehensive dismantling of the entire criminal enterprise. The investigation, while robust in its collection of evidence against Eleanor Vance and Mateo Rojas, highlighted the persistent difficulties in apprehending the masterminds of such globally distributed, digitally enabled fraud and trafficking schemes. The judicial process for Eleanor Vance commenced in the Peruvian court system approximately 2 months after her arrest, extending over a period of 4 months. The proceedings were characterized by a rigorous application of Peruvian drug trafficking laws, which carry severe penalties for offenses involving large quantities of controlled substances. Throughout several hearings, the prosecution presented a compelling case based on the overwhelming physical evidence. This included the 5 kilograms of high-purity cocaine, the forensically analyzed modified suitcase, and the corroborated surveillance footage depicting the transfer of the bag from Mateo Rojas to Eleanor Vance. The prosecution argued that Eleanor Vance's possession of such a significant quantity of narcotics, regardless of her stated intent, constituted international drug trafficking under Peruvian statutes. They emphasized the objective facts of the case, asserting that an individual is responsible for the contents of luggage under their direct control when attempting to cross international borders. Eleanor Vance's defense team mounted a strategy centered on the argument of lack of criminal intent due to manipulation. They presented evidence of the extensive love bombing and romance fraud perpetrated by Victor Thorne, attempting to demonstrate that Eleanor Vance was an unwitting victim, deceived into acting as a courier. Her recovered digital fragments detailing the intense online relationship were presented to illustrate the psychological coercion she experienced. The defense contended that her actions, while objectively contributing to a criminal act, were not driven by a deliberate intent to traffic drugs, but by a profound and calculated deception. After careful deliberation, the Peruvian court rendered its judgment approximately 6 months post-arrest. While acknowledging the elements of manipulation presented by the defense, the court ultimately found Eleanor Vance guilty of international drug trafficking. The judicial decision emphasized the strict liability component of narcotics offenses in Peru, where the act of possession and attempted transport of illicit substances is sufficient for conviction, even if criminal intent is mitigated by deception. The court recognized the manipulative context, but determined it did not fully absolve her of responsibility for the physical act. Eleanor Vance was sentenced to 6 years and 8 months in prison, a standard term for offenses of this magnitude, reflecting the severity of drug trafficking penalties in the jurisdiction. Following the sentencing, she was transferred to the Lima Correctional Facility for Women, commencing her incarceration within the Peruvian penal system. The legal outcome underscored the critical principle that while the mechanisms of deception were clear, the physical evidence of the crime and the strict application of national law led to a definitive conviction. The case of Eleanor Vance serves as a stark sociological lesson regarding the pervasive and evolving nature of transnational organized crime, specifically in the realm of romance fraud and drug trafficking. It highlights the weaponization of human connection and the sophisticated methodologies employed by criminal networks to exploit psychological vulnerabilities for illicit gain. The operational model demonstrated in this case, the meticulous cultivation of trust, the strategic use of digital anonymity, and the outsourcing of physical risk to an unsuspecting individual, represents a significant challenge to global law enforcement. This incident stands as a critical warning. Individuals engaging in online relationships, particularly those involving requests for international travel or the transportation of packages, must exercise extreme caution and engage in rigorous verification. The complete digital erasure of Victor Thorne underscores the calculated nature of these operations and the inherent difficulty in tracing perpetrators once the immediate objective is achieved. The memory of Eleanor Vance's experience serves as a sobering reminder of the devastating consequences when digital interactions transition into real-world criminal conduits. Her eventual clemency after 3 years of incarceration, granted due to good behavior and the court's recognition of mitigating factors related to her manipulation, offered a measure of relief. Her repatriation to Salem, Oregon, marked the physical end of her ordeal, but the long-term psychological and social effects of such an experience are profound and enduring, impacting her life significantly.